Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Cass MMA. Today I'm going to be going over my UFC 314 Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena predictions, getting right into the main event. I'm going to go with Belal Muhammad on this one. I think there's been sort of a movement in the past 2 weeks of saying that Jack Della Maddalena can pull this off. I saw Lucas Tracy's predictions. He said JDM. I know Bedtime's probably going to say JDM. I think MMA Guru is going JDM. And I feel like everybody they're picking what they want to happen. Because obviously, it feels like it's better for the UFC if JDM wins. Which I actually disagree with. I think it's better for the UFC if Belal wins. Because if JDM wins, we don't get Makhachev versus Topuria. Because he's going to go fight JDM. So we all need Belal to win. So we need to, you guys need to cheer for Belal if you want to see Makhachev versus Ilya, which I think we all want to see at this point. But yeah, I think Belal's going to get this done via decision. I think there's a movement to pick what you want to happen versus what I think is logically going to happen, which is going to be Jack Della Maddalena's takedown defense is pretty weak. He got taken down 6 times by Gilbert Burns, and it's not like his hips were there. And Gilbert Burns, despite being incredible at pure jiu-jitsu, I know he's an ADCC champion and stuff, or an IBJJF champion. He's not that good at MMA grappling. He's not as good of a wrestler in the octagon as Belal Muhammad is. And I think Belal Muhammad's going to be able to get to Jack Della Maddalena's hips really often. I know he's gonna do it early, he's gonna do it often, he's gonna shoot takedowns, he's gonna hold JDM down, he's gonna wear JDM out. And I just don't see JDM pulling a knee like he did against Gilbert Burns. Mainly because Belal has a better chin than Burns did. Burns was chinned by Usman. Burns had his chin wobbled. And also Burns was a lot later in his career. So even if JDM pulls a knee like he did against Gilbert Burns, I wouldn't be surprised to see Belal just sort of eat it. So that's why I don't think JDM's going to be able to knock Belal out. I'm sort of tired of picking knockouts. I did this when the Protez versus Ian Gary fight. If a fighter can only win via finish, you shouldn't pick them. And I see no possible route to a decision victory for JDM in 5 rounds against Belal's relentless pressure, his dirty boxing, his great takedowns with JDM's relatively weak hips. I know JDM's good at, he got up from all of Burns' takedowns. And Burns didn't land too much damage off of those takedowns. But I think Belal's a lot better at getting the takedowns. And I think he's going to be able to hold them down better than Burns did. I don't think he's going to be able to get away from Belal as much as JDM got away from Burns once he was taken down. So I just think Belal's going to win this. Maybe 49-46, 48-47. I could see this being a 50. I just don't see JDM winning a fight where his only route to victory is KO. This happened in Ankalaev versus Pereira. We're seeing this a lot more often. These guys who can win a decision, they're quite often beating the guys who need the KO. Now, at the same time, could I see JDM chinning Belal in 2 rounds? Yeah, it's a real possibility. And with the odds being plus 170 for JDM, I don't hate taking a bet on it, putting some money on it to see what happens. But the reality of it is, if you have to pick one of these 2 fighters, which is what I'm doing, I'm making a picks video, the right and logical option is to go with Belal Muhammad. And you see all these big YouTubers and big voices in the community picking JDM because that's what they think's more entertaining. And if JDM wins it, he's going to win it in a far cooler way than if Belal wins. If Belal wins, he's going to do it via decision. JDM would win via finish. And I understand that's cooler, and it's a more aesthetically pleasing thing to pick in a prediction video. But at the end of the day, I want to get my picks right. And I think Belal's going to win 49-46, using his pressure, using his takedowns. And I don't think JDM's going to be able to outbox Belal the same way he's been able to do to Randy Brown. But even then, JDM went to a split decision with Kevin Holland and Basil Havez. Those were his 2 fights before Gilbert Burns. Was split decisioning Kevin Holland in the big 2-3. This wasn't big 2-5. In the big 2023, he split decision Kevin Holland. I just don't see him beating Belal. So I guess I could see him fluke a KO, but I'm not going to pick him to beat Belal. So I'm going Belal in the main event of UFC 315. Next up, Manon Fiorot versus Valentina Shevchenko. I think Shevchenko's going to have like a people forget type of performance. I think she's going to remind us that she's in the position she is, number one pound for pound, and she's respected in the way she is by the community for a reason. And I don't think somebody like Fiorot's just going to have the, I don't know, I just don't think she's going to have the skills to pull it off. I know Fiorot's a really cool prospect, and like, she's somewhat entertaining for women's MMA standards, but I just think Valentina can mix in the takedowns if she needs to. I could see her holding down Fiorot, and I think she's going to win, like, Valentina Shevchenko 49-46, classic decision. And yeah, this is not that interesting of a fight to me, so I'm just going to honestly move on. This is a pretty weak pay-per-view. It wasn't too bad before Benoit Saint-Denis versus, what's the dude's name? Jeez, how am I forgetting his name? It's Alvarez, but what's his first name? I have no idea. Saint-Denis Alvarez, Joel Alvarez, that's it. Joel Alvarez got canceled. It was okay, but now it's a little rough, and I'm not too excited for Shevchenko Fiorot. And I have Alexa Grasso and Natalia Silva in the feature fight. I think Natalia Silva gets this done by implementing her grappling and holding down Alexa Grasso a similar way to Valentina Shevchenko in their last fight. And I think that's sort of the same thing that Shevchenko's going to do to Fiorot. I just don't think Fiorot's faced the same level of competition as Shevchenko. I'm going to go back to that fight. I just think Shevchenko's a different level to Fiorot. I think this is a big thing we see in women's MMA. The top fighters and the champions are just a cut above the contenders. We saw this in Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez's fight. And I think Valentina Shevchenko is that cut above the contenders. And I think Alexa Grasso is going to lose to Natalia Silva. I think it's going to be like a 30-27, 29-28. And that's it. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I think Natalia Silva is going to implement the grappling against Alexa Grasso and get the win. Next up, an actually pretty interesting fight, Jose Aldo versus Ayman Zahabi. This is a great fight for Aldo to retire on. This is probably the ideal Aldo retirement fight. I think he's going to beat Ayman Zahabi via decision. I just don't think Ayman Zahabi... First of all, you can't take Jose Aldo down, right? Like, that's not going to happen. I don't think Jose Aldo is going to let himself be held up against the cage like he did last time against Mario Bautista. And if I'm wrong about that, I'm wrong. If Aldo comes out here and he gets held up against the cage for 3 rounds again, and he loses because of it, it is what it is. But I just think he's going to make that slight improvement to get off the cage. And I think he he's a cut above Zahabi on the feet. They have like somewhat similar styles. Aldo's a little bit like slicker with his striking. But I feel like they're decently similar in their styles. I think Aldo's just a cut above Ayman Zahabi at this point in both their careers. And I know they're technically the same age, which is crazy to think about. Because Ayman Zahabi is viewed as almost like a prospect. And he's the same age as Jose Aldo. That's a really weird thing to think about. Even though I know Jose Aldo's apparently like 40. That's what Gilbert Burns said. But yeah, I think Aldo's going to be able to get this one done via decision. I think he's just going to be too slick on the feet for Zahabi. And I don't see Zahabi taking him down or really doing anything to him in the grappling. So I think via just his speed advantage, like, because Zahabi's not a fast fighter. He's not really fast twitch. And I think he's actually Aldo's going to have a speed advantage despite being really old. So I think he's going to get that one done. That's the feature fight, actually, not Grasso Silva. So yeah, Aldo's going to get that one done. And then Natalia Silva is easily going to beat Alexa Grasso. Benoit Saint-Denis versus Joel Alvarez is canceled, apparently. I'm like almost sure. That's the rumor. That's what everybody's saying. And I'm going to pretend it is. It isn't. I'm going to briefly talk about it. I think Joel Alvarez would have KO'd BSD if this fight went down. Probably in round 2. I think he's just a level above Benoit Saint-Denis. But it got canceled, so I'm not going to get into it really. First, like on the prelims, which I have no idea what they're going to move up to the main card. But you have Mike Mallet versus Charles Radke on the prelims. You got Say It Again Radke. And I think Mallet's just going to get this one done. I think this is the type of fight where, again, Radke's like known for being interesting on the mic post-fight. And a lot of people find him like entertaining. And Mike Mallet sort of quit against Neil Magny. He gassed out. We all remember that. And he also lost to Oh, he didn't lose. He beat Trevin Giles last time out, but it was in a boring decision. But I think he can get this one done. I think he can almost sometimes implement the grappling at certain points, take him down. I also think he can just simply outpoint Charles Radke on the feet for 3 rounds. Like, I could see this being a boring 30-27, where every single round, Mike Mallett's landing like 2 more strikes. But I'm going to pick Mike Mallett via decision over Charles Radke. Because you can be a little bit more technical on the feet and just throw a little bit more output and maybe mix in the grappling to get himself the win. Next up, Jessica Andrade versus Jasmine Jasudavicius. Jasmine Jasudavicius is actually like a decent up-and-coming prospect. She's looking pretty good in her last few fights. She fought Mayra Bueno Silva on the UFC Abu Dhabi card, and she looked pretty good. She just dominated Mayra Bueno Silva for 3 rounds, sort of held her down. It wasn't too entertaining. And I think it's Jessica Andrade's time has come in the division. So I think Jasudavicius gets it done. A 3 rounds women's MMA, 29-28. Or maybe even I could see this being boring 30-27. Like a Verna Jandaroba Jian Jiaonan type of fight where she just gets the takedowns and holds down Jessica Andrade. Next up, this one's really cool. Modestas Bukauskas versus Ion Cutelaba. I think this was a really clear fight to make after UFC Seattle. Like, it was obvious these two were going to be matched up. They both got quick finishes on that card. And this one's going to be like a war for probably a round before one of them gets knocked out. But it's going to be really entertaining. I'd like to see them move this to the main card to replace Benoit Saint-Denis versus Joel Alvarez. But it's probably going to be like Mike Mallett versus Charles Radke moved to the main card. But I really hope it's this fight that's moved to the main card. And in this one, this is a really hard one to pick because someone's going to get chinned. Ion Cutelaba fights wilder than Modestas Bukauskas. So I think Bukauskas is going to win via just being this, like, he's just going to be a little bit smarter than Cutelaba. And that's going to be enough to get him the victory. I could see this being a round 2 KO. I could see this being a round 1 KO. But I think once you get it out of the first round with Cutelaba, he loses all of his danger. So I think he's going to get this done in round 2 or 3. Or even maybe a 29-28 where Bukauskas loses the first round and wins the next 2. But I have Bukauskas in this one via round 3 KO, I'm going to say officially. Next up, we have Navo Sterling versus Ivan Urslan. I think Navo Sterling gets this done easily. He looked really good on the UFC Tampa card But here's the thing. He looked good versus Tuco Tukos, however you say his name. Like, that's a hard... Like, he looked decent. He didn't even look that good. But you can't trust Ivan Urslan. Like, I'm not going to be like, yeah, man, Ivan Urslan, that's a beast. He had a somewhat close fight with Cutelaba. But again, that's Cutelaba. I just think Navo Sterling, he's Israel Adesanya. He's whatever it's called, TKD. He's from that gym. I think he's just going to be too technical on the feet for Urslan. I think he's just going to win by outpointing him. Maybe he gets like a round 3 KO just by putting so much volume on Urslan. He just makes him like, not quit, but like he just piles on the body shots, piles on the headshots, piles on the damage and wins by round 3 KO. But I think he's going to get this done 30-27 decision. He's just too technical for Urslan, even though he didn't look that good in his UFC debut. Next up, we have Marc-Andre Barriault versus Bruno Silva. I'm not picking Bruno Silva to win a fight in 2025. He's like 1-6 in his last 7. That Alex Pereira fight like ruined his entire career because of the damage he took. So yeah, I think Marc-Andre Barriault gets this one done in like a round and a half pretty easily by KO. Even though he himself isn't exactly like Marc-Andre Barriault isn't a world beater. Nobody's like, man, Marc-Andre Barriault, he's a really good fighter. But I think he's good enough to be Bruno Silva. Next up, Daniel Santos versus Zhang Yang Li. I think Santos is going to get a KO in this one. I don't think Li really has... Li got murdered by Haider Emil 2 fights ago. It was that fight where Haider Emil just threw like a million hooks in a row till he got the finish. It was one of the weirdest fights I've seen in my life. But I just don't think he has the striking to keep up with Daniel Santos. And I think Santos is probably going to KO him pretty early. He's stepping up for somebody. Daniel Santos is stepping up on short notice for Gavin Tucker. So maybe that'll affect him, but I think he gets a round 1 KO. I don't think Zhang Yang Li is really UFC caliber. And lastly, Belal Muhammad versus Brad Katona. Belal Muhammad has one fight in the UFC, and it was versus Umar a year ago, which is crazy that Umar was fighting a dude making his debut, and then 6 months later, or like 8 months later, fought for the title, and almost arguably beat Merab. And I just think he's a level above Brad Katona, because Belal Muhammad he wasn't going tit for tat with Umar, but he dropped Umar. So, like, I think that counts for something. I think that puts him a level above, like, the Brad Katonas of the world. I don't think his Bexot's that good. I don't think he's going to be ranked or anything. But I just don't really believe in Brad Katona. Like, I don't know. Like, nobody... This is a vibes pick. I just don't think Brad Katona's that good. And I don't think he gets this one done. Even though Brad Katona hasn't lost a horrible comp, his last loss was to Gene Matsumoto. It was pretty good. But I think Bexot gets this one done. 30-27, just decisions, Brad Katona. Yeah, that's it for today. Those are all my picks. This card's looking pretty weak. I'm hoping Benoit Saint-Denis versus Joel Alvarez isn't actually canceled, but it definitely appears like it is. Anyway, that's it for today, and I hope to see you guys next time.